conversation in Nigeria these days is more on the lockdown, which is one of the adopted measures by the federal government to flatten the curve of the spread of COVID-19. The upshot, especially economically, has drawn a lot of people into the discussion. How are Nigerians adjusting to the extra time at home? How are they meeting their needs? How is the government making it bearable for the people? These form our big story on this episode. You're welcome. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Making lemonade out of lemons, that's the perspective of Ibidako family at this time when there's a compulsory order to stay at home to break the spread of COVID-19. They choose to see it as a period to relax and bond.
When you wake up in the morning, you pray, but this time around, you extend your prayers. Not as in the normal one you do in the rushing before you go out. Now, you can extend it. If you've been doing 30 minutes before, you can now do 1 hour, 2 hours, because you know you are not in a hurry. You are not going out to anywhere. So after that, you take care of the surroundings, take care of the garden. Most times we dance when we have my daughter from school. So, when she returns from school, she teach us some dancing steps. The latest one I don't know. So, and a younger brother. So they try to teach us, Mom, that this is what is happening now. In case we go out, so this is how you dance. Okay, we watch them, so we try to dance. We try to follow them.
I have to bond with my daughter. She has been in school since January. She just came home because of this issue, the pandemic. So being with her is, I think I like it. I've not really been home with her for a long period. She was in boarding school. Immediately she finished, she gained admission into the institution. So that time of really being together has not really been there. She's always out of the house. But right now, I think I'm happy.
That's not what we are saying. Yeah, exactly.
Work does not have to stop, at least not for those who can work from home. And one of them is the president of the Institute of Software Practitioners of Nigeria, Mr. Yele Okeremi. He shares videos with us on how meetings are now virtual, but not without its challenges.
For those who are privileged to have fairly good supply of electricity, this is likely going to be a challenge as time goes by for quite a number of people who may not have access to very good power supply. But while we still have access to power supply, we can actually be as productive as possible. I've had 2 meetings already with my colleagues in the office. We just hope that particularly, yes, telecoms is not very bad, and although quite a number of meetings that I've had, we see some people dropping calls because the 4G in their area is not very good, but somehow we are still managing it. But I think the bigger challenge will be power supply, and for the fact that there will probably be no movement, the ability for people to have, petrol generators or getting diesel, it might be a challenge, but this is just, we haven't even started yet officially. But for me, this is day 7 of work from home, and we've maintained very productive setup.
On the streets, it's a rare opportunity to have the roads free of traffic, especially in Lagos State, where traffic jam is a major feature. Young men have turned the roads to a recreational center. There are others who have not found the lockdown easy. The lack of economic activities have impacted on their sustenance, and creating an alternative has not been easy.
If you can close the church, you should close the market as well. Because you say anywhere people are gathering, a market is a place where people gather. So make provisions for us to sustain, not for you to start saying we should stay indoors. Staying indoors will not give us food, and our children will start crying.
These complaints have formed the humanitarian aspect to the lockdown. The federal government says it has started cash transfer. The president has also approved the release of 70,000 tons of grains from Nigeria National Strategic Grain Reserves to be distributed to the poor and vulnerable. There's also the payment of salaries and other necessary actions which would sustain the economy during the lockdown.
His directive is make sure salaries are paid, make sure critical infrastructure projects like roads, rails are protected. As much as possible, use local inputs so that we retain value within our economy, and also make sure that you have measures that protect the poor and the vulnerable.
States are giving out food items with the target being the most vulnerable in the society.
People who eke out a living based on what they get on a daily basis. This lockdown exposes them to hunger. So we are setting up food banks in the 3 senatorial districts and working out a distribution template that will reach out to this poor of the poor, using stakeholders like the various community development associations, neighborhood leaders, traditional leaders, and other stakeholders, so that only those who need this palliative get it.
The mode of operation here is that we told the CDC, that is the Community Development Committee in the local government, to go into the community and select the indigent, the vulnerable, and the less privileged within the society, and present us their name and their identity. So those are the people that we are giving to directly here today.
Interventions have gone beyond providing food and money. The young may be losing out in their education, and the government has started implementing lessons through the mass media.
We have one initiative that is really working and working well now. That is, we are delivering lessons on TV and on radio. We had yesterday, today's Zone 2 has played, and I'm very excited because the students are keen in, and yesterday we had over 1,000 WhatsApp messages following up. So we put it on Facebook, so that the students can call in and ask questions and their questions answered. The teachers are also able to ask them questions, and they too are able to reply. So we are really excited about that initiative, and we deliberately picked radio in this day of internet and so on because we understand our demographic, and we know that majority of them will have access to the radio, if nothing else. Sets the ball rolling on the distribution of telephones really to our students, working with a bank. The bank is leading, and they've already donated 20,000 pieces. These systems are offline, but they have a little window, or aperture as they call it, or through which they can send test results to their teachers, and they can receive the teachers' comments as well, and they can chat with their teacher. It has no access to any other app, and the phones are locked. We have to start somewhere. Let us start with them. We also want to work with low-cost private schools, so we are also talking to them as well. But we'll start with our SS3s because when they come back, we have a feeling that exams may start very quickly. So we don't want a situation where learning slides and they become relaxed. So that's why we are doing this on purpose. So we are also working with low-cost private schools, but we are starting off with children in our public schools. I don't think there's anything selfish about that. That's where most students are. The teachers are our teachers. They are our teachers, and they've been rehearsing and working on this all week. Most of the recording for radio is in their homes, but the recording for TV will take them to the station as soon as we finish rehearsals. So we are using all sorts of online collaboration methods as well, Zoom and so on, to collaborate with our teachers.
We have selected a very good time, which the television people regard as a family belt. That is when most families get together to watch TV. So ordinarily, we expect that the students will be available at this time, and even their parents or guardians will also be available. And our goal is that after listening to this broadcast as a family, even the parents and guardians can also act as surrogate teachers to interrogate their word on what they have learned. And if you look at the very key subjects like mathematics and English, they also even we have a program for repeat on Mondays between 7:30 and 8 and 8:30 and 9. We'll take mathematics and English, and on Wednesday there is a repeat of so that whatever is lost on Monday, you can always catch up on Wednesday.
The government is asking for collaboration from more radio and television stations to enlarge the group of beneficiaries from the special education program. While the government looks into the public sector, the private sector are not resting on their oars.
Private schools would also be involved in radio if they want to be. But most of the private schools are going online, and they're using platforms that will help their children, as well as any other network that you can find. You can, TV, video conferencing, Zoom, using an LMS, all of those are available to some of the schools that are, still able to do it. So I think private schools will be okay. When we were in session before COVID-19, we had a dual mode education. We flipped our classroom so that the children go online, they read the material, they form their notes, and then they just come to class to interact with the teachers. And so that was what we've been doing for the last few years until COVID-19 came, and it became, all right, if we cannot have these children here to where after instruction online, they now get activities in class, what can we do? So we now added the remainder of the online teaching, which is, how do you now interact with children on Zoom, for example? How do you voice over your PowerPoint so that even if you're not there, they can listen to you and they can hear the explanations that you give for each one of those concepts? And how do you grade online? Just ordinary papers, how do you grade those online? And how do you set an exam for your students online and set it such that you maintain the integrity of the exams, by scrambling the answers, switching things around, selecting random questions for each student so that when I see mine and I see B, C, D, A, that's the right answer, I can't call the other child because I don't know which question he's getting. So these are all the things that we're now doing to get our teachers ready for online teaching.
Honorable ministers, ladies and gentlemen of the press.
Beyond the effort to buffer the consequences of the lockdown, the task force continues to appeal to Nigerians to keep to the measures set out to accelerate its work and reduce the spread of the virus.
As contact tracing and testing capacity are being ramped up, more and more cases will be found, and the number of new confirmed cases of COVID-19 is expected to rise initially. We also worry about persons, especially Nigerians, returning to the country through land borders, who run a higher risk of infection if they are with an infected person in a confined space for a long time, like transit in a crowded bus or a car. Therefore, it is advisable that all travelers postpone non-essential travel, whether by air or by land, and whether national or international. In this regard, all Nigerians are advised to remain where they are resident and to stay safe and obey the rules and the laws that are provided, except if they are returning home from a previously arranged journey or from a business trip or a vacation. With the expanded national case definition and the addition of 2 laboratories to the NCDC network of molecular diagnostic laboratories, national testing capacity has increased. Moreover, the lockdown in high burden states presents the advantage of reduced population mobility and leaves more people at home to be found during contact tracing. As I said, All this means that more people, more samples can be collected and can be tested more quickly, and the turnaround time is shorter, and it means that more cases will be discovered.
As the number of confirmed cases increase, so do the demand on health facilities, which is why the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has asked all state governments to create isolation centers with at least 300 capacity.
As an interim measure, Kaduna State Government is in talks with the Ahmadu Bello University Zaria for use of the PCR machine at the African Center for Excellence for Neglected Tropical Diseases. When these talks are finalized, the general public will be informed accordingly. Similarly, government has identified a location that will be used as an isolation center for asymptomatic people. The state's facility management agency has been mandated to quickly renovate and make this location conducive and purpose-specific for these categories of individuals. However, this is a stopgap arrangement pending when a permanent structure is built. To this end, government will be approaching private donors to support this project so that we can scale up our response to the pandemic.
COVID-19 is an enemy with great potential to wreak havoc on our people and even wipe us out from the face of the earth. The IMO initiative is therefore intended to spur us as a government and as a people to rise to the occasion and stand up valiantly for our rise to freedom from rampaging diseases and the criminal fraternity among us, whose sole ambition is to deprive other citizens of their lives and property.
80% of cases are mild to moderate. Only a few of those cases are actually severe.
There's also the plan to recall volunteers from the pool of retired health workers in the country, as well as training of interested individuals.
We are training doctors, we are training pharmacists, we are training laboratory scientists, we are training psychologists, and then other lower cadre healthcare providers. Even from as low as the security man up to the consultant, all does that. We batch them out and do them batch by batch. We have different categories of volunteers. We have volunteers who go into tracing, people, drivers, cleaning and all that. So you must be healthy, that's the first thing. Then you must know exactly what you're coming to do. Not midway, having been trained, then you abscond and say, oh, now you realize the danger in it. So that's the basic thing. And if you are committed, you are trained, then you'll be able to cope with what you are doing. And of course, you must know that it's not for pecuniary reasons, it's humanitarian. Although Mr. Governor has arranged some form of insurance for volunteers as well as some other things, but that is not the issue. The issue is to be available to help your fellow Nigerian in times of problem like this.
The first instance, in the first 4 to 6 weeks, we are planning to train about 1,600 workers to support the fight. And then we will assess, and if we need to open more treatment centers, we train more staff.
Hand over your right dorsum and interlace the fingers as well.
As more volunteers step forward to assist in fighting from the front line, they count the cost, which is not just the exposure to the virus, but spread to their family members. Because of this, since the outbreak in Nigeria, most of the medical personnel have not been to their homes. The frontliner, Dr. Adishola Sunday, is one of those.
The reality on ground now is that you can't even go. It's not about me personally. You can't even go home now when you're working with this kind of infection. So the hospital personnel engaged in the treatment of these patients have been lodged in hotels. So they can't, during this period, they can't even go home. It's not even advisable to go home. We do all sorts of things we have to do to ensure that we don't get infected, because when you're managing infectious diseases, you are actually the most important person. Don't get infected. So staying out of your home is one of the things that you do in an outbreak like this. So we're not even going home. Of course, as I said, it's not about me personally. So many people are involved. Some, for one reason or the other, they do go home, especially when they have issues to deal with. But most of us, we don't go home. And it's a lot of sacrifice on the part of our spouses. It's a lot of sacrifice. But it's something they have to do. Because for their own safety, they have to do that. You speak on phone with them. Even if I was asked to go home, I won't go. No. Not because I'm infected, but because I wouldn't, after finishing this, I will still go to stay away for some time. And we expect all the other officers to do that.
Adoption of preventive measures continue to spread as more states and the Federal Capital Territory are seen engaging in fumigation and decontamination. Main targets are public areas mostly used for social gatherings, streets and markets, some of which have been approved for skeletal operations even in the period of the lockdown.
The virus, as we know, can remain on surfaces, be it on metal, be it on plastic, on wood, door handles, buildings, places like that. So it's very important to decontaminate all these areas because in some surfaces the virus can linger for hours. And the danger there is if it's there and you touch it, you are bound to contract this the virus in your hands. So this is why we are doing this disinfection, decontamination, and why it's so important that we have the additional 10. We can now go from facilities to actually decontaminating our streets, which you have seen in other developed nations and developing countries. This is a very important exercise. The Federal Ministry of Environment, beyond contamination, decontamination and disinfection, is also there with all the health specialists. As you can see, some of them in uniform here. We are in all the 774 local government areas to do grassroots advocacy, to counsel people, to even train volunteers, which we are looking for. And soon we'll have a website where people can now indicate interest so that they can be trained on how to go about educating people how to avoid this deadly virus.
So we are doing it at Opera Square, bearing in mind that this is more of a sports center, gathering center. There are always a multitude of people here. If not because of lockdown in the state, you will see people jogging, exercising themselves. And this is a centerpiece for the state social gathering. If there is anything that is being done by the state government or even federal government or anybody that needs, maybe that may attract a crowd of maybe 500 and above, that will use Opera Square. This is the aim behind it. And the state government is being proactive to make sure that coronavirus will not be a threat to the state. The state government have intention of fumigating all the major markets in the state before they are reopened. And on Monday, possibly we will do Ogige Market alongside the Nsukka Road and Peace Park. We'll map out Peace Park, bearing in mind that a lot of people gather there to enter bus, either they are coming to Nsukka or they are traveling to any other place from there.
The battle continues. We must and can win COVID-19 if we stick to the directives. And yes, there are sacrifices, but in the long run, COVID-19 will be defeated. That's our story. Please share your thoughts and pictures on how you're dealing with the sit-at-home order. Share it on our social media handles and we will reach out to you. Thank you for watching. I'm Ini John Mekwa.